God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 86, verse 20. Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Why do they not believe? And when the Quran is recited to them, they do not fall prostrate. This is because those who disbelieve are rejecting the Quran. God is fully aware of their innermost thoughts. Promise them painful retribution. As for those who believed and led a righteous life, they receive a recompense that is well deserved. So we can see in these verses, referring to people who do not believe in the Quran when it is reciting to them, when it is being recited to them, they do not fall prostrate, meaning they do not follow it, they do not obey it, and prostrating can be symbolic. It can also be physical. People can fall prostrate when they hear God's revelations. God says, when God's revelation is cited to them, you see these people prostrating and, having tears in their eyes. But these are the people who basically, when they listen to the Quran, it doesn't affect them in any way. They just see it as fairy tales or tales from the past, as the Quran says, and and they disbelieve. And God says God is fully aware of their innermost thoughts, because God knows in their innermost thoughts there is no belief. They're full of doubt about it, and that's why God promises them a painful retribution. God's promise. We understand that God never breaks His promise. Um, and God says that as for those who believed and led a righteous life, they receive a recompense that is well deserved. So the righteous obviously will get their recompense. God promises forgiveness for them in contrast. And these people will be, God says, very satisfied with their works. God says, you have no idea how much joy and happiness are waiting for you as a reward for your righteous efforts. So we cannot imagine, how blissful the paradise is and what all the blessings that exist there, and how they're going to be eternal. We're not going to, God willing, the people who are in paradise, they're not going to want anything more than, just being in that, eternal happiness, state of eternal happiness forever. And this is God's promise. They'll never get bored. They'll never want any other substitute, God says. Right? God says there'll be no jealousy. There'll be no nonsense. And, this is God's promise. And this is something that, God is inviting us to strive for. God will now continue reading Surah 85, the galaxies, Al-Buruj. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. The sky and its galaxies, the promised day, the witness and the witnessed. Woe to the people of the canyon. They ignited a blazing fire. They sat around it to watch the burning of the believers. They hated them for no other reason than believing in God, the Almighty, the Praiseworthy. To Him belongs the kingship of the heavens and the earth, and God witnesses all things. Surely, those who persecute the believing men and women, then fail to repent, have incurred the retribution of Gehenna. They have incurred the retribution of burning. So we can see that, God has promised for the disbelievers eternal retribution. And these are the people who God is swearing by the sky and its galaxies in the day of judgment. And the witness and the witnessed, we are the humans, they are witnessed, and our companions are our witness. So God is swearing by all of that, that, surely those who persecute the believing men and women and fail to repent have incurred the fire of Gehenna, they've incurred the fire of burning. And it talks about a community that sat around the blazing fire to watch the burning of the believers. So they're so evil. I think my video got getting cut off. They're so evil that they sat around it to watch the burning of the believers, so they could feel good. They like to see the believers suffer, so much so that they sat around to watch them burn to death. So this is terrible for these people, not the people who got burned, but really the people who were burning them, because the people who got burned would be the ones who would go to heaven for being persecuted and tortured, for the sake of God. Um, but the people who were burning them were the people who are going to burn in eternal misery forever. The souls of the righteous people. If someone puts them into fire, God's going to take them either before they are put in the fire, or God is going to make it in a way that the fire doesn't harm them, because God promises protection for the believers, right? Or if it's their time to leave, yeah, God will take their soul away before the fire hits them, right? So, but the real people who are going to suffer are the people who started the fire, the people who sat around it to watch the burning. I mean, this amazing life that God has created, this amazing test, is designed in such a perfect manner that you have all these people that are thinking that they're fooling God somehow, but God is allowing it to God is allowing it to be a way for them to burn and suffer for eternal life. So we can see the distinction God says in the hereafter is going to be far greater than the distinction we see in this world. Like we see the rich and the poor, and we think that the um, differences are great, and they're becoming greater, but the differences between the righteous and the unrighteous in the hereafter, in terms of their quality of living and quality of life, their standard of living, is going to be enormous. The differences are going to be enormous, right? Far greater, as God says, because you have people that are so shrunken they're burning in hell. Nobody's literally burning in hell. I mean, literally burning or suffering in this world like the people who are going to suffer in hell, unless it's for a few minutes and they die, right? But people in the eternal life, they're going to suffer for eternity. So they're having the worst life, worse than anyone on this planet. And the people who are in paradise, imagine if you can even compare their life to maybe the wealthiest people in this world. I mean, if wealth, even if we don't take wealth as a standard, as of any standard that you take, um, uh, the life in paradise is going to be far better than the life anyone can live, as a king in this world, because we cannot imagine, right? There's nothing like the blessings that exist in paradise. If you're given a lot of wealth and blessings of this world, you'll get bored eventually, or you'll get tired, of course, after some time. But there's no such thing in paradise. People don't get tired. People don't get bored. They never feel any coolness. They never feel any heat in that sense. They never feel cold. They never feel too hot. Everything is perfect. There's no misery whatsoever. So nobody can live like that in this world, but in the hereafter, that's what we're gonna see. Even the people that are just in the lowest rank in the heaven are gonna be in so much bliss as compared to the people in hell, right? So this is something for us to be mindful of. And God says, God will now continue reading. It says, "Surely those who believed and led a righteous life have deserved the gardens with flowing streams. This is the greatest triumph. Indeed, your Lord's blow is severe. Indeed, your Lord's blow is severe. He is the one who initiates and repeats, and he is the forgiving, most kind, possessor of the glorious throne, doer of whatever he wills." Did you note the history of the troops, Pharaoh and Thamud? Those who disbelieve are plagued with denial. God is fully aware of them. Indeed, it is a glorious Quran and a preserved master tablet. So, God says the believers obviously have deserved gardens with flowing streams. I mean, these are allegorical descriptions of paradise, but you can imagine it to be much more than the gardens of with flowing streams that you can picture in this world. You know, and God says this is the greatest triumph, right? So there's nothing like that we can ever experience here. It's going to be more beautiful than any gardens or any mansions that exist here among the wealthiest of the wealthiest, right? So, and the most beautiful design and um, you know um, uh, fashion that you could imagine. So this is really something that God says the believer should be eager to strive for, and God says that God's blow is indeed the blow is severe, and God is most strict in enforcing retribution, but He's at the same time most kind, most forgiving towards people who believe. People who want to be guided, people who want to be on the right path. God is really kind and forgiving towards them. He knows that we are humans, we have certain limitations, and we're trying, but we're fallible creatures. We make a lot of mistakes. So God is extremely forgiving and kind and most just, more kind than the kindest people we see in this world, right? God is just and kind, not just kind. So he enforces justice, but he's so kind and merciful that people even still abuse his kindness to the point that they take it for granted and do things that hurts them. In fact, um, but God forgives the people who want to be on the right path, and He forgives other people. For example, people who die before the age of 40, because God knows about them that they are souls that deserve to be forgiven, and so He allows them as a mercy to leave this world. And God is it says, possessor of the glorious throne, doer of whatever He wills, and He controls everything. And God is reminding us about the history of the troops Pharaoh and Thamud. So these communities were very powerful communities, and they had a lot of wealth, a lot of um, treasures, a lot of things at their disposal. Many people working for them as slaves, and so God says that we should think about the history. I mean, what happened to them? People in this world who are living like the lives that those people were living can expect the same consequences, and we see those people who they are, and God has promised for them eternal retribution, just like the people of Pharaoh and Thamud were annihilated. And God is fully aware of them. He says, obviously, no one can get away in any way. I mean, God is witnessing everything, so every one of them will get requited for what they are doing and what they're thinking. And God says, indeed, this is a glorious Quran and a preserved master tablet. So, in a preserved master tablet, so we know that God has the original master. The Quran that we have in this world is ink and paper, right? It's written on ink and paper, but the Quran itself is with God, and preserved master tablet, right? The original, or what we would think that is the original, right? And then on Earth we have it in ink and paper, but it's not the original one that God has created. Eventually, apparently, is how I understand these verses. So people in this world can touch it, they can burn it, disbelievers, whatever they want to do with it. But obviously, the original master is with God. Surah 86, the bright star, Al-Tariq, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. By the sky and Al-Tariq. Do you know what Al-Tariq is? The bright star. Absolutely. Everyone is well guarded. Let the human being reflect on his creation. He was created from ejected liquid from between the spine and the viscera. So God is swearing by the sky and by the bright star a tariq. I mean, there's many different ideas different people have about uh, uh, what a tariq is. I mean, God could go into more detail about what it is, but God tells us it is the bright star. So some people think it's Polaris. Some people think it's another star, the North Star. Polaris, I think it's called. But it's irrelevant, really, to know which one exactly it is. I think. Otherwise, God would mention to us the exact details of the name of the star and its location and everything else, if there was any significance to it for any reason. But it's not mentioned. And God says that human beings should reflect on His creation. You know, and this is actually scientific also because people during the time of the revelation of the Quran, people had very limited knowledge about reproduction and how it actually happens, right? And it talks about ejected liquid between the spine and the viscera, right? So from a scientific standpoint, that makes a lot of sense. It's very accurate. That's exactly where it comes from. The ejected liquid, as it's referring to the semen. So we were all just an ejected liquid at one point, right? And God says we should reflect on our creation. I mean, how did this elaborate design, come into existence? This elaborate design, like today, when you have people in robotics that are trying to design the most efficient machines that can do the tasks that are tasks that we humans have to do in this world. They understand that the most optimum way to design it would be design it exactly the same way as the human beings are designed to do the exact same things, to do the movements that we do, because this allows us to do the things that we're required to do in this world, like doing the dishes, cooking, holding things, walking, etc. Right? And if you wanted to build something to do all those things, you would essentially build something that looks just like a human being, and one that can see, one that can talk, one that can hear, and have expressions to communicate, etc. Right? So God has created us in a perfect design, and so how that happens, right? From how that liquid has all the instruction on where it's supposed to be, right? I mean, it's not I mean, this is one way of explaining it, right? But when you think about it, God is controlling everything. Has designed the laws for all of this to happen in the right sequence. Obviously, the whole genetic code of the human being, you know, has to follow step by step, right? Like, for example, let's say you're baking a cake, right? You're not gonna put the icing first and then the cake on top, right? Everything has to go in the right order and everything has to go in stages, right? First, you have to take the dough, then you have to, soften it and everything, and you have to put stuff in it, and you have to put in the oven, etc. Right? So all of that has to happen in stages. You cannot like mess up, like do the first thing last and do the last thing in the middle, etc. Right? In the same way, I mean, the human design and growth. Even if you take something as little as, like let's say you have the male and the female cell joined together, right? The sperm and fertilizes the egg, right? And you have one cell that is created, the zygote. I mean, how that divides itself, how the process of mitosis takes place and how this, you know, chromosomes, they separate from each other, how that cell divides itself. I mean, all of that has been programmed and put together in that ejected liquid, that you can't even see, you can't read the instructions. But God has created this elaborate design, and how those genes are structured. If you look at the design and how they have to be sequenced in a particular sequence, you need computers to understand the algorithm in which they work and how they process information. Who created all of that? Of course, God did, right? I mean, nothing else can explain that. So we have to think about that, how God makes all of that work. We have no idea how any of that works, and these bodies are living in this world and functioning flawlessly for years, you know. Obviously, we have our flaws, whatever imperfections we have because of what we're doing. But God has created it in a flawless design, and it's working flawlessly, um, as it should. And this is something that, if we reflect on, it's going to help us realize, how is your heart beating? Just think about it. How is it pumping blood to every part of your body? Imagine if one part of your body stops receiving blood, it's going to die, right? It's going to stop working. And God is making all of that happen. Who created all these connections, right? How did they know where to build themselves, right? I mean, it's like, can you have a building that constructs itself? No, you have to have a designer to build it. And this is why it's important for people to reflect on that, especially a human being. You're talking about a form of life, which obviously, people can't create life, even if they plan for centuries. Verse 8 says, He's certainly able to resurrect him. The day all the secrets become known, he will have no power nor helper. By the sky that returns the water, by the earth that cracks to grow plants. This is a serious narration, not to be taken lightly. They plot and scheme, but so do I. Just respite the disbelievers is short respite. So God says He's certainly able to resurrect him. So God, who created this design and these human beings the first time, He can definitely recreate them, because recreation is easy. Once you have built a ship, you can create many ships after that, right? The first time, supposedly harder part would be coming up with the design of a ship. So the design has already been created, and the ship has already been created once. So it's easier to recreate it, in other words, right? And so God is certainly able to recreate us if He created us the first time around. And, He created so many, not just one, right? Every minute, so many people are being born in this world. And so God is reminding us that He's able to resurrect them, and not just He's able to resurrect them, but He's going to resurrect us all, after we leave this world. So we have to think about that. And God says, on that day, all the secrets will become known. Imagine all the secrets that people keep. All of them are going to become known on the day of judgment, and people will have no power. Nobody will have helpers. Pharaoh is not going to have a helper, nor any other king for that matter. You know, they will all be just human beings, helpless human beings, just like any other humans. And then God says, "By the sky that returns the water." Right? The sky that returns the water, when the water evaporates and condenses, it falls down on the ground. So the sky returns it back. It says, and the earth that cracks to grow the plants. So God is swearing by the earth that cracks to grow the plants and the sky that returns the water, that this is a serious narration not to be taken lightly. Um, so, so when we read the Quran, we should understand that what you're reading is very is serious stuff. As God says, if we read the Quran to a mountain, it would crumble out of reverence for God. So all these statements are heavy, heavy statements in the Quran, right? And so why God's saying this is serious narration not to be taken lightly. And then God says that these people plot and scheme, the disbelievers, they plot and scheme all the time. But God says He's the best schemer. Um, so God says, just respite the disbelievers, a short respite. Mm. So, uh, right. So, God willing, um, I will continue reading Surah 87. The Most High, Allah. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Glorify the name of your Lord, the Most High. He creates and shapes He designs and guides. He produces a pasture, then turns it into light hay. We will recite to you, do not forget. Everything is in accordance with God's will. He knows what is declared and what is hidden. We will direct you to the easiest path, therefore you shall remind. Perhaps the reminder will benefit. The reverent will take heed, the wicked will avoid it. Consequently, he will suffer the great hellfire, wherein he never dies nor stays alive. Successful indeed is the one who redeems his soul by remembering the name of his Lord and observing the contact prayer salat. Indeed, you are preoccupied with uh, the first life, even though the hereafter is far better and everlasting. This is recorded in the earlier teachings, the teachings of Abraham and Moses. So this surah, the Most High Al-A'la, is 19 verses only, and we can see that it is glorifying God. It starts with saying that you should glorify the name of your Lord. The Most High, is one of God's attributes, and this chapter is named after God's attributes, the Most High. And He creates and shapes. He creates all the creations. He designs them. He produces the pasture. As we can see, then He has created the pasture in a way that it decomposes itself and provides food again for more pasture to be produced. Any waste that stays in this world, I mean, it's all decomposed back, so there's really no waste in that sense. All of that is completely recycled back into the earth so that it can come out again. So this is God's design, because God has created everything in exact measure. And God says that we will direct you to the easiest path, and everything is in accordance with God's will. So we understand that God is doing everything. Everything that happens around us is happening in accordance with God's will, even the things that Satan is doing, right? So we have to remember that when things are happening around us, even though we may not like those sometimes things that may happen around us that we may not like, we need to understand that we should not lose our temper, should not get angry, because everything is in accordance with God's will. If you really want to prove yourself to be a submitter, you have to understand that, because you have to submit through those circumstances. If you object, you're objecting to what God is doing. It's an important part of our submission to God. In fact, as we know, it's one of the most important sermons by the Messenger of the Covenant. He said, "This is the most important sermon I've ever given." Right? And we understand that this is because you're supposed to be a submitter, right? So if you call yourself a submitter and then you're objecting all the time, I mean, that tells you that you're not a submitter. And you should tell yourself that when you find yourself in that state, which is fairly easy to get into if you're not reverent and you're not mindful of the fact that God is running everything. So it's very important for us to remind ourselves everything is in accordance with God's will. He knows everything that is declared and what is hidden. Sometimes we get upset because of the things that we think people are doing sneakily, for example. But God is the one who knows everything that's happening. Things that are hidden from us, things that people are doing behind our backs or in secrecy, things are doing like scheming, etc. All of those things, God is completely aware of them, and everything is in accordance with God's will. So we should not sweat it, and we should not worry about any of those things, because God is in full control of everything. Sometimes people get stressed and they have anxiety, or they get worried about things because the life of this world is chaotic. We live in a chaotic world. It's like riding a roller coaster. Sometimes looks when you look, especially when you start reading the news and you start tracking what's happening in the world. It's a crazy world out there, and sometimes our minds are gonna wander off, and sometimes we might feel a little scared because it seems like we're just like a tiny inch away from a big disaster every day, right? But we have to understand that everything is in accordance with God's plan, and if God, uh, uh, wants you to be protected, you'll be protected no matter what. God wants you to have your provisions. You're going to have your provisions. Um, and Satan is not allowed to inflict you if you trust in God and you do your part. You don't fear or grieve as a submitter because you understand that God is running everything. There's a good reason for everything. We learn from the things around us that happen. Try to find the meaning in what is going on, whether it's in your life or around the world. Even if you can't find it, just remember that God is the one who's doing everything. There's a good reason behind everything that's going on. God is in full control of everything. And God says He will direct you to the easiest path. So if you trust in God, He'll make everything easy for you. He'll direct you to the easiest path, and you will float through life, right? Otherwise, it's just going to be a very bumpy ride, and it's going to be, you're going to have a lot of turbulence and a lot of chaos, and bad things will happen. And, eventually, these people who will have this kind of life will end up being miserable at the end when they end up in hell because they did not observe God. But people who observe God, God says He will direct them towards the easiest path, and God says, therefore, you shall remind. So, for that reason, you should remind because God says the reminders benefit the believers, So, we should never um, be discouraged from, spreading the good in this world, like, telling people, giving them good advice. Even sometimes our advices may not be received well, or it may not be received the way we want it to, but we know that it's good for our soul. When we remind others, yeah, it will benefit the believers. So if you are a believer giving the reminder to a disbeliever, let's say, and you don't know this person's a disbeliever, but you're the one giving the reminder, it will benefit you because you are a believer. But if the other person is a believer too, obviously it will help them, right? I mean, people who are open and seeking the truth and seeking the right guidance from everything they're doing in their life and apply the Quran in their lives, the reminder benefits them because they're able to navigate this life in a much better way. It's like you have a map, you don't know how to get to it, but God is the one who guides you in the map, puts the arrows there, tells you, okay, go here, turn left, turn right. We have this guidance from God, and He makes us go through the easiest path, so we can reach our destination. And God says the wicked people will avoid it, while the reverent will take heed. So the guidance is going to be heeded by people who are reverent. The souls who are righteous. Just as God says, the land that is fertile will readily produce its crops. And the bad land barely produces anything. All the water goes to waste. But the good land readily produces crops the same way with the believers. When the good advice comes to them, when the reminder comes to them, it benefits them. But for the disbelievers, it's just like they say, the water off a duck's back, right? Which is an expression that we use for something that's just not going to have any effect. Because water off a duck's back, no matter how much water you put on the duck's back, the duck is going to come dry because it's not going to make the duck wet. That's the way a duck is built. Physically impossible to get the duck to get wet because it's not supposed to. She's not supposed to get wet, right? And it's the same example. A reminder is going to benefit the believers at the same time. It's like talking to a dead person. If a person's a disbeliever, they're going to be deaf and blind to it. And so God says that um, consequently, those people who are deaf and blind in this world, they will suffer in the great hellfire. God says, when He never dies nor stays alive. So in the hellfire, He never dies, but He doesn't stay alive either. It's like a very, it's like hard to imagine a state where you can't feel alive, but you're not even dead, right? you can still feel what's happening, but you can't get out of it. You're stuck in the middle of, say, life and death, a state of life and death where you can't die, but you can't be alive. It's just tr- troublesome just to even think about it. Like it's just starts to, it's just like I can't describe the feeling like when I think about it. So God is reminding us in verse 14 that successful indeed is the one who redeems his soul. So people who will redeem their souls, they are successful in the test that we came, So we're either going to pass or fail. The people who are going to pass are the ones who are going to be able to redeem their souls. But the people who are going to fail are going to lose their souls. They're going to lose all uh, the nourishment from their souls. Many souls that are going to suffer a miserable end. And God says, indeed, the human being, people are preoccupied with the first life, right? And this is true because we know that majority of the people spend majority of their time in this world thinking about this life, thinking about what they can achieve in this world, not thinking about the hereafter, not thinking about the real life, but thinking about this temporary illusion where they know that they cannot find happiness, but they're still running after these things, this life, and they're preoccupied with it. So, I mean, how can you realize that you're preoccupied with this world when majority of your days is spent thinking about this world? When you're concerned about the things of this world, things you hear, things you say, things you watch are more of this world than the hereafter. Shows that the hereafter is not on your mind, right? The hereafter should be on our minds all the time, every day. We should think about the hereafter, like what am I doing, now? The things that I'm doing now. I mean, is it gonna help me in the hereafter, or is it gonna help me just tomorrow and day after tomorrow, but not in the hereafter? We should think about that, right? I mean, everything that we do, if it's nothing got to do with growing your soul, it's a waste of time, right? People waste a lot of time in this world on meaningless things that don't matter or really are not going to matter because at the end of the day, you think they matter to you now, but at the end of the day, when you leave this world, you're going to leave those things behind. So you're thinking about fussing over those things and making them your God if you're thinking about them and you're preoccupied with those things, right? Enjoying things of this world or spending more time on things of this world than the hereafter, is something that is should be worrisome for us because the hereafter is a real life, and the more time you spend thinking about the hereafter, the more you're going to invest into it, and the more you're going to invest into it, the better your afterlife is going to be, right? So people should plan not just this life, not just 5 years from now or 10 years from now, but they should plan for their hereafter. So everything that we do in this world has to be, thought of and well thought and planned in such a way that we know that this is something that's going to benefit us for our hereafter, not just this life, our post-retirement account. Surah 88, overwhelming, Al-Ghashiyah. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Are you aware of the overwhelming? Faces on that day will be shamed, laboring and exhausted, suffering in the blazing hellfire, drinking from a flaming spring. They will have no food except a useless variety. It never nourishes nor satisfies hunger. Other faces on that day will be full of joy, satisfied with their work in an exalted paradise. So Surah 88, talking about the overwhelming, Al-Ghashiyah, uh, is the name of the chapter, which is the overwhelming. So the retribution in the day of on the day of judgment is going to be overwhelming. Faces on that day will be ashamed, will be shamed, and they will be exhausted, tired. God says, like, you will think that you will see people staggering. You will think that they're drunk, they're intoxicated, but they're not. It's just a shock of that day. It's such a terrible day. I mean, of course, imagine like the day you find out something bad in this world, right? That's how bad that day could be. Like, say, like you find out that something happened to someone you loved, um, they passed away or something. And imagine like someone having a day where they're grieving. But but I mean, how can you explain the state of a person who's going to find out on that day? Imagine like someone being sentenced to life in prison, for example, right? How is that day going to be for that person? It's going to be horrible. But imagine the day a person is going to be sentenced for eternal misery in hell. I mean, it's even hard to imagine. But obviously, these people on that day will understand that you know the sky is falling apart, the world is crumbling, and all these things are happening literally, and you realize that these people realize that they're completely doomed. There's no way out. They're never going to see a tiny spark of happiness in their life. So it's a very sorry it's a very sad state to be in, but for these people, I mean, obviously God gave them the guidance, and all the verses of the Quran were given to us. Quran was handed to us, but these people disregarded the Quran. They they changed it for the nonsense written by people, Sahih Bukhari and all these other books, to rival the Quran, man-made injected verses in the Bible, let's say, to rival the Quran, falsehood, to nullify your works. Um, it's sad when you see people are not able to glorify God without mentioning their idols. Like I was just at the superstore, and uh, 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 a song came on, and I was like, "Oh, wow, this song is about God." I was like, "Really?" I kind of find it hard to believe this guy singing about God, and sure enough, the end of the song was, praising Muhammad. And so all these people obviously are going to be devastated on the day of judgment, because they're going to understand that this is the end. And God says they will be drinking from a flaming spring. They will have no food except the useless variety. It never nourishes nor satisfies hunger. Other faces on that day will be full of joy, satisfied with their work in an exalted paradise. So the believers are going to be in an amazing state, while the disbelievers are going to have the complete opposite, right? So what is preventing people from not to go in that direction, and to go towards something that's so amazing and so fascinating that we cannot even imagine how great that is, right? What is it? It's the disbelief, the obstacle of believing in the hereafter, believing in the unseen, that God is omnipotent, that He alone is our Lord and Master. But the doubt of resurrection is something that is an obstacle for these people more than anything else, that is preventing these people from believing. So and that's why, like, these verses, I mean, surah, all the verses towards the end of the Quran are more geared towards just reminding people, think about the hereafter, think about the hereafter. The events of the hereafter are mentioned, how they're going to be like, so we can know in advance what we can expect, right? So God is warning people ahead of time, like, pay attention in this world. Like, this is what you're uh, going to go for, right? So you have the right path, you have the wrong path. You know, this is what you can expect if you go on the right path. This is what you can expect if you go on the wrong path. So the guidance is there from God, but the problem is the human being is still going to hell. Most people are, because they don't believe and they don't think that it's ever going to happen, right? Which stops these people from believing. And a lot of people who say this, they're still doubtful about it, which is why they're not guided. And which is why they're attracted to all these idols that they set up. They can't be satisfied with God alone. They have to have idols in their lives. even if they decide to acknowledge God, you know, which we understand is a huge injustice towards God, because God is the one who gave them all these things, and then they're going to opt for worshiping idols. But God says the believers will be happy and full of joy. On the other hand, the disbelievers will have food that will be just useless. You know, imagine just surviving on waste. You know, the rest of your life. I mean, what a miserable life it's gonna be, right? With food that is doesn't nourish you in any way. Like imagine if you have to eat hay for the rest of your life. I mean, how happy would you be? But it's gonna be worse than that. You know, if you eat, I mean, if you can imagine, like God says, like you know, they will drink um, sand, right? Like sand. I mean, how will your stomach be? I mean, if someone ingests some sand, you know, they have to be rushed to a hospital. They're gonna be in terrible pain and infection, and so many things will happen, right? But God says these are the things that are going to be their food, you know, like lye will boil in their stomachs. You know, imagine drinking something that's boiling, going to boil your stomach. Imagine like drinking boiling water, for example. We cannot even stand it in this life, right? And the things in the hereafter is going to be worse. Uh, and as on the contrast for the believers, I mean, they're going to be in complete bliss for eternity. They'll be satisfied with their work. Their faces will have joy. They'll have joy on their faces, and in an amazing, exalted paradise. You know, who doesn't want that, right? Except someone who doesn't believe. So may God allow us to be one of those fortunate people. You know, because if we don't make it, then you know, all this life is completely useless, and it's a terrible disservice to God for the blessings that He has given us, for the knowledge that He has bestowed upon us as His out of His mercy. You know, so many people in this world are completely blind, and we have been given the message that we can truly benefit from now. And God has given us a chance to reflect and ponder on these verses, and you know, find our way out. So with this, I'm going to end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah, brother, great study.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you, brother.
MashaAllah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, mashallah, brother. It was very important when you were talking about the hereafter. You know, remember as much as you can about the hereafter, because ultimately, that's like you were explaining, like that's the real life.
Yep.
And like you can even tell by normal they live in, like we've talked about this before, how fast the people like you see, like they're like they grow up, they're in their teens, 20s, and then they get very old, and all this happens so quick.
Mm-hmm.
Me and brother John were talking about how when people leave when they're like very old, and
Mm-hmm.
they're a disbeliever, they're not ready to counter what's gonna come after that. Like what's gonna happen when they're in this old age. They haven't nourished their souls, and like they get very like we're talking about situations where people get scared, because
Mm-hmm.
they haven't nourished their souls at all, like, and you know like it starts hitting these people at that time. That's why it's so important, to examine these things. Like God has, like, subhanallah, like he said, he has um that to him is the easy path. We know that it's very simple and very easy. Like, thank God for that. That it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to understand. And um
Is your alarm going off?
oh yeah, sorry.
That's okay. You can just minimize the window and
Mm-hmm.
hit okay. Yeah.
um, so yeah, subhanallah,
Mm-hmm.
it's we know that, like, thank God, that he has made
Mm-hmm.
the path um very simple to understand and easy, for the believers. Like God
Mm-hmm.
says, we the believers accept everything, and they just submit.
Mm-hmm.
So um mashallah, just examining these things, and like examining what goes around us, and like like you were saying, like really think about the hereafter, and use these things, to get us closer to God, and really appreciate, what um the guidance God has blessed us with, because without it, like like it's so scary, like what if we didn't have this guidance? It would be still so, it's like, and like um people are so unappreciative because they go to certain situations. Like there's people that even given the Quran, or like um and they just like automatically like choose to be like they don't take heed, they just ignore it, but like if you really think about it, like it's very scary, without having um like the guidance of who you are to nourish your soul, like who you really are. It's like I was thinking about, like, imagine if we didn't, if um just to be appreciative of God's mercy, like it's really just him being merciful. And thank God, brother. Yeah, it's like you were saying, it's so important, to think about the hereafter, because you explained it very well, mashallah.
Thank you, brother.
mashallah, like verse from 80, from 87, the Most High, about reminding the people. And mashallah, I was glad to hear that because I thought, I think the same way. As you mentioned, sometimes you give advice to people, even if it's not well received, but that's exactly, we're doing it, because we reverence God and that, like, we know, like, that the conversation we're having with this individual is, going to be recorded, or it is recorded, so in the sense of, sending, sending good works ahead for ourselves, we're going to do it regardless, or with no fear of being blamed. And really, especially too, I know I said this before, but it's important. But if we're thinking like if we put ourselves in that person's shoes, and we know and believe what's coming, the day of reckoning, the day of judgment. Imagine if that person never gets the message, or imagine if they had an opportunity, if you just simply, even if it might have made them uncomfortable, it's like, who cares? And I'm not saying being forceful. There's a really good way to go about it, but even if it's not well received, it's like you're doing it for them, and as well as for yourself, and really you were doing it for God, uh, because whether they take heed or not is up to them. But like if we were in their shoes, um, we would want to get the message, especially knowing what we know now and how valuable these teachings are. So any little thing we can do to talk to people, even if it's not well received, that doesn't matter to us. MashaAllah. Uh, y'all can hear okay, Brother Suleman? Hello?
Sorry, I'm having trouble to hear you guys from my phone, so
Okay,
uh,
yeah, I was wondering.
this one.
Yeah, because I seen you keep joining.
Yeah.
I was like, why is he going? I figured that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yes,
Cool.
something weird going on.
Yeah, like the verse 7 of Surah 87 about how God is running everything. Everything's in accordance with His will, and yeah, it's a good reminder. Like as the following verse
Salam alaikum. Yeah. No, brother.
Are you guys able to hear me?
No. I thought it would be Oh, now I can, but sorry.
Oh,
But I thought you know how when the whole meeting disconnected. I wonder who it was because I thought it would be I think it was you're the first one that I seen in the meeting, but
mm.
you've been leaving, you know, and it hasn't disconnected. So
Yeah. So actually, after I left, because I was
mm-hmm.
having trouble from my phone,
Mm-hmm.
someone else became the moderator, and when they left,
Oh, okay.
it ended the meeting accidentally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now it makes sense.
All right. Anyone else has any comments or questions about the verses we read? Mm-hmm. Mhm. Right. Mm. Uh-huh. Right. Right. Mhm. 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 Uh-huh. Right. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mhm. 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 Mhm.
MashaAllah, very good.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, then they don't realize like how twisted, all the nonsenses that they have been listening to, and all these things that they have, insults that are in the Bible, that they believe in, that they think is the truth. 90% of it is the truth, and the rest is nonsense. And they believe in the nonsense, the 10% of the nonsense, the 90% of the truth. They don't care for, but they care for that 10% nonsense that they have, created their ideology of their religion around, right? And so, but I mean, it's all nonsense. And I would say to that person, like, okay, so you're telling me that, this is the truth, like what you're saying. So, like, prove it to me. I mean, how can they prove it to you? Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Crazy book. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. 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 Not received well. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, I mean, eventually, we will see very soon. I mean, it's already dying out right now. Christianity is dying out, but we will see it really die out after the smoke, God willing. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm. That was like a coworker or something. Was that like a coworker or something? Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah. And I mean, you can look at this verse in two ways, right? I mean, you can look at it in the way of like, okay, well, you can still remind people, but God says the reminder will only benefit the people that are righteous. And so, like, one way of looking at it is also like, okay, only people that are going to take heed are people who are reverent. So if you find people that don't seem interested in submission or like in following God, don't seem sincere, like there is actually no point in reminding those people. So, like, I wouldn't, in situations, wouldn't even waste my time on it, even though I know I said that advice is not well received. But I'm talking about people that you don't know, and essentially, like they could take heed, right? And so, I mean, in that sense, like unless someone's exposed to you, I mean, anybody can take heed, right? So it's hard to tell, but I think over the years, for me, I kind of been like, I don't know, discouraged. Maybe it's not the right word, but like, I don't even talk about God with anybody, you know, at work, etc. Because I know like it's very hard to find people who are even like uninterested in seeking the truth, right? Everybody has these preconceived notions about who God is and what religion is, and most of the time, the only time I find myself, I find myself, like involved in these discussions is when I hear people like say blasphemous things about God, like or people try to invite you to like Christianity or something. Usually in those times, like I have spoken, but I've never or like something about someone, like this one person at my work. I tried to give him a little bit of a message, as his name was Rashad. So that was like, oh yeah, I should give him the message, and obviously that didn't benefit him at all even. But normally, yeah, I just don't even talk to these people because I know like they're not even interested in the first place. But if I find someone, who I feel maybe thinking, maybe looking for the truth or something, I like to give them the message, but then again, like you can never really know who's gonna take heed or not. But I think talking about it with people at work, you know, um, it's not going to hurt you if it doesn't go right, but the chances of finding a submitter and you know is so uh, rare. Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. Discussion was brought up. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. 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 Hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. I think if I have to bring up the conversation and inviting someone, and I want to invite them to submission, I think Apophis will probably be something that I think is relevant. Like if it's like if I'm inviting someone in 2029, you know, I'll tell them about the Apophis because because right now, if you tell someone about the Apophis, I mean, it's not even going to matter. Like they're not going to pay attention as much. If you talk about in 2029, it might be relevant for them. It's weird, but with but like yeah, I mean, I would try to give them the miracle and mathematical miracle is like the thing that is supposed to attract these people. But I think really the chances of finding, I mean, obviously not to say that this is the wrong choice. I mean, someone who's supposed to be guided is going to be guided by God through any means, right? But the thing is, um like as we know, I mean, it's so hard to find people who are actually seeking the truth right now. uh like the odds of coming across someone at your work, for example, I mean, right? I mean, there's people finding out about God and submission online, right? Well, those are the people who are looking for it and they're finding it. But just the odds of just running into someone at your work who becomes a submitter, I think it's really low. Hmm. Hmm. uh, uh-huh. Yeah. apophis is going to be relevant to someone who believes in the mathematical miracle, right? And so first they have to understand the mathematical. Yeah, right, great. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, the way the test is designed, it sucks people in pretty easily. People can get sucked into this worldly life, either problems or entertainment. You know, um, it's very easy to get sucked in. If we're not thinking about God, and I mean, our prayers and contact prayers and all these things are there to help us, to remind us to remember God. And the Quran is inviting us to remember that as well. But that's why it's important for us to force ourselves to be with the believers, to be in these Quran studies, because all these things help remind us where we're supposed to keep our real focus. Um, yeah, I can't be stressed enough, like how important it is to be mindful and to be aware of the hereafter, so we can invest our energy where it needs to be invested and not worry about the things that are meaningless.
MashaAllah. I just said MashaAllah. Um, so true. MashaAllah, right, brother. And it's amazing how the miracle is designed. Like you don't have to be a genius to understand it. And then also, it's like like the messenger explains that anybody, and no matter like how smart you are, can understand it. Like you don't have to be a genius. Like super smart, like Einstein or something. You could understand it, like if you know what um a little bit of addition, you know and then you could understand it if you're like um if you a super high level math how you say that, mathematician, yes, excuse me, mathematician, and still even that person would not be able to come up with something like the miracle of the Quran, you know so it really, like, it's there, for um any human being, no matter the education, no matter how smart he is, just it's it's amazing, mashallah, nobody, if you come across this miracle, you know no one has an excuse. You can't say like, oh, I didn't know too much math, or you can't say like, oh, I know more, like, um like this makes more sense. No, you can't say, there's no excuse, like you if you right, like if you like just, like you said, just disregard it, like without really like thinking about it and doing your research and digging deep, like you said, it could be life saving, but if you just um disregard it, like there's it's just it's it's very bad, like if somebody comes across this miracle and they just right away, just turn away from it, it really tells you how evil they are, like they don't want to know nothing about God.
So there's one thing actually I wanted to bring up. It's an off-topic point. So if there are no comments or questions related to the verses we read, I would like to discuss. Okay, so yeah, so recently, I was in a conversation. I saw somebody doing their salat, and I thought that they were doing it wrong. So I tried to correct them, and then what happened the next day after that, I noticed someone else, another submitter out of the blue sent me a message asking me about that question, and he started, we started having a discussion about the same thing about the contact prayer. And I thought like it was interesting that, I just corrected someone yesterday, and today, like, it's not a coincidence that find myself in a conversation where this person's asking me this question about how to do the contact prayers correctly. It was about the tone of the contact prayer, throughout your salat. And, this brought up an interesting point, because they started sharing the information from the booklet that was published by the Messenger of the Covenant. And initially, like, what this person was saying, him and I were both in agreement with with what I thought it was the messenger had said, So, but what happened is the discrepancy. I realized that I was wrong, the way I was doing my salat before, and this person was doing it correctly all along. And God allowed this person to send me this message so I can look at the information and come to the right conclusion about how I was doing my salat, and the tone of the salat, right? So what I mean by that is, we found out in the course of that discussion that, and which explains why I had been doing my prayer the wrong way, was that by Mustard Tucson, when I became a submitter, I was going off of the article published by Mustard Tucson, which shows how to do the contact prayer, and I trusted in what was written there, thinking that this was a reproduction of the exact article that was written by the Messenger of the Covenant, because it had the same images that the Messenger of the Covenant had published in the booklet about how to do the contact prayer. However, the discrepancy here was based on the fact that uh, the people who published that article on Mustard Tucson website, um, like quite, I believe, purposefully um, and maliciously. Um, if it was purposeful, it was malicious. So they cut off an important apart from the image that the messenger of the covenant had put, right? So if you look at that booklet, God willing, I'll share the booklet itself also on WhatsApp, and if anyone else needs it, they can also message me. But I think everybody's here on WhatsApp. So in the booklet, the messenger of the covenant had put these diagrams also, right? And in the diagram, when the person who's doing the contact prayer, it's a picture of a little, not a little girl, a picture of a girl with a ponytail, and when she's I believe doing her prostration, and when she's doing her bowing position, it says, and she says it silently, right? So because people look at the verses in the Quran, and I think this is probably what happened with Mustard Tucson, right? Because they thought, oh, the messenger is making a mistake because the Quran says you do the contact prayer in a moderate tone, and here the messenger says do this part, say this part loud, say this part silently. So the messenger must be wrong, and they cut off the part from um, the booklet, right? And I know that this was done maliciously because the other parts are where it's not said uh, um, uh, silently. They didn't cut off those parts, right? Just only the parts where it says she says it silently, they cut it off. And so, like at first, when we had the discussion, like I was thinking, like, okay, well, we only have the information from the messenger of the covenant in the videos where he's doing the contact prayer. He's showing how to do the contact prayer, and there he's saying everything in the same tone, right? But obviously, then when I later thought about it, it makes sense, because if you're going to do a video and you're going to tell me about what to say in the prayer, you're going to say it. If you say it silently, I'm not going to be able to tell what you're saying. So that makes sense. But so that could be the explanation of why he's saying it in the same way. But then I think when it comes to the real proof, I was thinking, okay, what is the proof? What proof I have that this is from the messenger and not from someone else? Like if I've seen it in a video or something, I would believe that, right? That you say your bowing and the prostration part out silently. So then I thought about, the videos where the messenger of the covenant is doing the contact prayers with a group of people, right? And we can see the group of people behind him that are doing the salat too, right? So we know that when he says you do the prayers in a group, you say the Al-Fatiha mentally, right? So that is being done mentally. So people are quiet when the Al-Fatiha is being recited, and only the person who's leading the prayer is reciting the Al-Fatiha out loud, right? But then we see that all the other parts of the prayer, the entire congregation, they're repeating it in their moderate tone, right? Like for example, what I mean by that is when the person says Allahu Akbar, you can hear the entire crowd, that everybody else is saying Allahu Akbar in moderate tone behind them. You can hear them in the videos. And when they're getting up, they all say Subhana Rabbil. I mean, when they get up, Sami Allahu liman hamida, they all say it. And when they bow down, they all say Allahu Akbar, but you don't hear the other parts when they're prostrating or when they're in the bowing position, right? You don't hear that. But all the other parts, everybody in the crowd is saying it in a moderate tone, right? So that is actually shows to us that this is the right way of doing the prayer. And the fact that that publication is written by the messenger, is something that should be a proof for us that that is how we're supposed to do it. God willing, I will post the booklet also, and then I will also post a link to the article from Mustard Tucson where those parts were cut off. Right, this is a reason why there's been confusion among submitters because of that, because those pieces were cut out. Mm-hmm. So, yes, like silently, like whispering, yeah, moderate tone. Mm-hmm. No, we don't say the Al-Fatiha. That has to be we whisper. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. MashaAllah, welcome. Yeah.
MashaAllah, yeah, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michelle, you can also see the same thing that Dr. Rashad is doing. When he's doing the prostrations,
Mm-hmm.
he's doing it not in the same tone as when he's reading the Fatiha, right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
talking about where he's explaining the salat, but
Mm-hmm.
where he's performing the salat. Then you can
Mm-hmm.
clearly see that he's like
Mm-hmm.
the tone changes.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's true. Like brother Suleman, like you said, he's brother Jaffer, he's explaining this a lot, in those videos. He's
Mm.
explaining how to do it. So of course he's gonna, you know, say everything in a moderate tone or like in the way he was saying it, because he's teaching it, But when he's in the Friday prayers, it's like you just explained. That's how he does it.
So how were the people in Masjid Tucson doing it? Like, were they doing it silently, or like was it loudly done by the
Yeah, so I
messenger?
think I think there is a difference, right? So like for example, when I was doing my prayers with them, I didn't hear them like say those parts out moderately in a group prayer. Like in a group prayer, people that were behind, most of them now, you see they're just following silently in the back.
Mhm.
And so I think that's probably because they think that when they're following, they have to kind of do the whole thing silently behind. But I think when they're doing their contact prayers individually, then they might not be saying those parts out silently because they'll say, well, Quran says, you do it in a moderate tone, right? So because they pay little attention to things that the messenger has said, um, so they discarded a lot of things like insurance and things about perfect happiness and stuff because they think it's his opinion. And so this is probably one of the reasons why they removed those parts from the article. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. It says silently that you more of a whisper. Hmm. Hmm. No, Al-Fatiha, no,
Mentally.
Al-Fatiha, we're following mentally. You're not going to be whispering behind. No, no, silently in this context, we mean like you kind of whispering it. But the Al-Fatiha has to be like mentally. Hmm. Hmm. Right. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm. Everything else except the bowing and the prostrate part. You know? Yes, you're gonna say that. Normal. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Brother, brother, Abdullah put a
Mm-hmm.
comment.
Yeah, so Brother Abdullah made a comment saying that maybe the illustrations are for the group prayer. So I would suggest, Brother, I will post a PDF, and God willing, you can look at it yourself because he doesn't mention that this is about the group prayer. You know, it's the individual person doing her prayer. Like it's not, the illustration is not illustrating a group prayer, it's illustrating one single person doing their prayer. And the whole part, that whole part, as you can read in the sequence, that's not talking about the group prayer, right? Um, so that's the difference. God willing, I'll post it. Then we can continue the discussion. I'll post it actually now if I can. I just have to grab my computer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. So I just posted. You can see if you go to the page number 3. She says, she said Allahu Akbar, and so you can see it's not talking about the group prayer because it says she quietly says the Al Fatiha out loud. I know, which is a little confusing. You know, quietly says the Al Fatiha out loud. Because you know, if you're in a group prayer, you're not supposed to say the Al Fatiha out loud. You're supposed to mentally follow it, right? So it's not referring to the group prayer. And then she goes, yeah, and then she goes, no, no, that's then you can see in the pictures. You can see she's bowing. It says she says this silently. And it says she says this silently when she's prostrating too, right? And you know, it's funny actually. The person, the person who was, the person who I was talking about was doing it, and I was trying to correct her. Was my wife, you know, who I was doing her prayer, and she had the same hairstyle, the same. I mean, she normally doesn't have a ponytail, you know, but that day when she was doing her salat, she had a ponytail just like her, and she was doing her prayer. And I went down and told her, I said, no, this is not how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to keep a moderate tone. And the next day, you know, this other person from Germany is started messaging me, asking me about, you know, the tone of the contact prayer. And then I came across the booklet again and I saw, I was like, oh, that, that just looks like. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. And you can see. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And then other thing is like the reason why I say that Mr. Tucson, like they did it on purpose, because like, let's say if they took out um just all of the things that are captions that are in the pictures, then you would say, okay, well, maybe the captions were needed or something. But they left the caption for the standing position. It says she quietly says the Al-Fatiha out loud. They didn't cut that one out. But where they only cut out the captions in the Al-Fatiha, no, not, I mean, in the bowing and the prostrations, right? God willing, I'll post the article from their website so you can compare the two. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and it's deceiving because if you go to their website, it says this is a text version of the contact prayer booklet produced by Dr. Rashad Khalifa. So they're claiming that this is this not because yeah. So I'll post. Mm-hmm. 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 Mashallah.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah. They may have $20 bills for you this time, maybe $100 this time.
Maybe bring you a ring or a necklace with diamonds. Inshallah. You know that rice you
Mm-hmm.
put out here too, brother? There was one, Sparrow, he was by himself and he was like trying to, cause the rice got very hard. So I think he was trying to break it. Yeah. That's very cool. Mm.
Oh, the yeah, yeah, I should, yeah, God willing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They should be able to download it from the books and publication section, right? Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to mention, so in the next version, God willing, for the submission app, I added a bunch of languages, other languages for not the Quran translation currently. I mean, we still have a couple different languages, but then for the app itself, also, like currently the app is only available in English. So with this new update that's going to come soon, God willing, the app will be available in 30 different local languages. So like it's going to be like Urdu, Greek, Dutch, Turkish, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, a bunch of others. Urdu, Arabic, like 30 languages, Russian, etc.
That's awesome, brother.
Yeah, mashallah.
Mashallah.
Yeah, Japanese also. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess they still use it, but like a lot of people, don't understand English at all, so it must be difficult for them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I guess God's will, good time, before the smoke comes, so people, people don't have an excuse like, oh, we don't understand the language. Hmm. Well, yeah, I know. Hmm. Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm. 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 Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Also, there is, like someone mentioned, um, about the 29. Someone mentioned about the messenger of the covenant being stabbed 29 times. But then there's also the 29 sets of initials, right? Or the 14. Well, mm, 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 mm. Mhm. 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 MashaAllah.
Mashallah. Also, you know how they say that apophis is gonna. They say it's gonna come really close. You know, like, and then they like it's not gonna hit, but that should be like your attention should go up. You know, like they're saying it's gonna get very close. Like that should be like, huh? You know, like
Mhm.
it should keep you on your toes, even
Mhm.
um just that. You know, and that information they don't have about the one that's making a lot of noise now. But really, you know, like Brother John just said, it's um anything, you know, will have to be like it's um Apophis is the only one, it's the one that was discovered in Tucson on the
Mhm.
19th, you know?
Mhm.
Like that's, you know, like it's clear proof,
Yeah. Yeah.
subhanallah, you know.
Also the geometrical value of Apophis, all the letters, individual letters, you put them side by side,
Mm-hmm.
it's a symbol of 19, so it has God's signature on it,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Right.
Other one doesn't
Mm-hmm.
have this thing. And
Right.
that one is Egyptian, right? So they already have the name written in Arabic. So you cannot say, well, you because you spelled it this way, it's an English word or something. It's in Arabic. It's in Arabic, and that's the standard way of writing it.
Subhanallah.
Mm. Sent them to the Middle East. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Water. Mhm. 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 Right. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Right. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mm, 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 mm,
Subhanallah, brother. Yeah, it is the same thing, and it's um, but but they try to make it like it's not, and it's very bad, They try to like I mean, I've heard before, like these people, like they will like it's very sneaky, because you would tell them and like they will be like, no, they don't, like or they will be wishing washing, like not trying to make it a big deal, but As submitters, we know it's a very big deal, and this is exactly what Satan wants, because if these people continue to think like this, like it's they're falling, like into Satan's trap. And even though if they are aware of it or if they're not aware of it, it's basically that. And it's and they should take heed, what the with what God has given them. The Quran, it's complete, it's fully detailed, and it goes against that, you know. And the only thing, like really what it is, it's satanic, it's bad, everything, like there's no good in it, and it's really is idol worship, like Brother Suleman has videos, on YouTube, like in the beginning when he's talking about these things, and it's really that, it's really idol worship, if they want to see it like that or not, but it's very, very bad, it's and they become like those people, like hypocrites, because they become like the Mohammedans, the traditional Muslim people, they like the miracle is saying, like it's telling these people the truth, and we know how the um like how it happened. And we know the idol worshippers, at the time, like um after Muhammad left the complete Quran, the idol worshippers put things in there, and they did and then they got exposed, subhanallah, like the messenger says, God sees to it. God is omnipotent and he's running everything, and God exposed these people. And what they should have done is they should have taken heed, when the messenger came, but they didn't, and like mashallah, we know that everything is already prophesied. It's uh, um like as God is concerned, everything's already done, and you know these how horrible, what these people did, like at the time of the messenger, they totally just went against him, even though he was just bringing the truth that God was telling him um to reveal, like just he was just submitting to God alone. That's all he was doing, you know. And why don't these people, that have all these videos, audios that the messenger is clearly telling us, that do not follow anything else, just the Quran, like clearly, audios, videos, and these people, like if they want to see it this way or not, they they are falling in the same trap, it's but they be like, oh no, look, they talk about like the traditional Muslim, the Mohammedans and stuff like that, but they're doing the same thing. They even if you like, that's all hadith, like circumcision and all that's in hadith, like how can that not click in their mind, like, but um and so yeah, there's no way around it, saying that, oh, if you want to do it or not. No, it's very bad. And um it's, as submitters, we should take a firm stand on that, and um yeah, it's very bad. And don't shy away from it, like say how it is, it's satanic, and it's not part of religion, it's not part of submission to God alone.
All right. Anyone else has any comments or questions about anything we're talking about? So I also looked up the authoric, um, and Chat GPT. I found some information about the authoric. It says that the name authoric means the knocker or the night visitor, which could describe the periodic pulsing of a neutron star detected as a rhythmic knocking signal by radio telescopes. Pulsars are extremely dense remnants of supernova explosions emitting pulses of light and energy in space. And this aligns with the Quranic descriptions of a bright object that appears in the night. And then, yeah, so just this, I mean, a lot of just speculation, right, at this point. But typically, I mean, people are saying, like, some people are saying it's a pulsar also. That's what is being said there, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Ellen. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Crazy. I don't believe so. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Polaris is not a neutron star. No, it's not a neutron star. Yeah. But I mean, that's just ChatGPT saying that it's referring to a pulsar, so we don't know that for sure. But I mean, I don't know where it found out about what Tariq means in Arabic. What does Tariq mean in Arabic? Oh, the knocker. Huda says it means a knocker. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's just the innermost. I mean, that's just the first unit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, people didn't know what pulsars were. They were first discovered in 1967. Hmm. But I mean, you can still see it with your naked eye, can't you? Hmm. 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 Yeah, but see, it says that the pulsars, you can't even see with your naked eye because they're extremely small and dim, invisible light. However, astronomers detect them using radio telescopes. So it can't be the bright star, like it's what the way it calls it, the bright star. I mean, if it's a bright star, like I would assume that I should be able to see it with my naked eye. Mm-hmm. But they're small and yeah, but it says they're extremely small and dim invisible light. Yeah, so it's like the opposite of bright. They're the dim stars. Yeah, I mean, anyways, like to me, like I don't have that information. If this was relevant, I guess like it would be mentioned. So it if it's the if it's a Tariq or different star, it still doesn't change the. I mean, the rest of the content basically, it's God is swearing by. It would be good to know, I guess. But if you don't know exactly which one it is, it's not. Um, I guess that critical for our salvation to know which one it is, right? There's a crab pulsar, it says, which can be faintly seen in visible light through large telescopes. Yeah, so if you're like an astronomy nerd, like you might be able to see it. Yeah, we can see the Apophis coming. We can create our own planetarium. Hmm. Right. Are there any other comments or questions from anyone? Okay, so I guess if there are no other comments or questions, God willing, we can conclude our study for today. I did have one uh, off topic from Brother Khalid, but he is not here anymore, so maybe we'll talk about another time. So, anyways, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. God willing, thank you for joining us, all of you participating. And thank you, Brother John, for broadcasting. And God willing, we'll see you in the Tuesday study. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, brother, for the study. MashaAllah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. God bless you all.
God bless.